The gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
We rise today to thank both the chairman and the ranking member of this committee, Chavis and Mr. Cummings. Thank you for your leadership on a very important issue of which I rise to be part of, with a little history on this issue with an earlier passage of the No Fair Act some many years ago. I support this legislation, which ensures the agencies effectively implement their Equal Employment Opportunity EEO programs, and that federal employees are never prevented from disclosing discriminatory or wasteful actions to Congress, the Office of a Special Counsel, or inspectors. How important is that? We have a history of addressing workplace equality, and that is why I sponsored similar legislation in the No Fair Act, which first was introduced to Congress in 2002. This was a preceding legislation that had a sense of Congress provision, whereas this particular legislation further strengthens the responsibilities and rights of employees. The No Fair Act set the precedent for imposing additional duties upon federal agency employers intended to reinvigorate their long-standing obligation to provide a work environment free of discrimination and retaliation. On October 2, 2000, the House Science Committee held a hearing dealing with actions at one of our agencies. Dr. Marsha Coleman Adebayo, who have been in my office repeatedly, and I mention her name because of her continued vigilance in speaking about issues dealing with whistleblower, in actuality won a $600,000 jury decision against the EPA for race and sex discrimination under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. As we all listened in this hearing, it was clear that what we wanted to do was to prevent the retaliation which we see in this legislation here today. I am grateful that we now have a roadmap for dealing with individuals who want only the best for our government. I can call some of the names. Mark Felt, the FBI agent known as Deep Throat during the Watergate scandal of the 1970s. Frank Serpico, New York police officer who confronted his department for the rampant corruption the leadership let take place. Jeffrey Weingarten, a tobacco executive who admitted that tobacco companies know they're putting addictive chemicals in their cigarettes. And of course, Sharon Watkins, one of those who was an executive at Enron Corporation. Of course, these individuals come from different walks of life, but the whole idea is to make sure that we, as a member of Congress, recognize that whistleblower activities or actions are clearly a part of good government. According to the 2014 Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, only 60% of federal employees agreed that they could, quote, disclose a suspected violation of any law, a rule, or regulation without fear of reprisal. I know your committee, Mr. Chavis and Mr. Cummings, is really the front line on providing this forum, and I'm glad to be able to join you as a member of the Homeland Security Committee and Judiciary Committee to again emphasize the importance of safe and discrimination-free workplaces. I am grateful again to have had the opportunity firsthand to listen to at least one of our whistleblowers who only wanted to be able to help establish a workplace that was free of discrimination and fear. So again, I want to make mention of Marsha Coleman Adebayo, who worked so very hard, a dedicated federal employee, and make mention that as we passed the No Fear Act with a number of members, and as we have noted a number of whistleblowers, they were actually Persons of the Year on Time magazine, I join my colleagues in supporting the present underlying legislation and ask my colleagues to support this legislation, and I will yield back my time.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Maryland.
Mr. Speaker.